The weight of desperate times. Marcus Reed adjusted his diplomatic uniform for the 100th time as the transport ship descended through the crimson atmosphere of Kitharos Prime. The fabric felt foreign against his skin, too clean and formal, compared to the battle armor he had worn for most of his adult life. Through the viewport, the alien world stretched below them like a living jewel, its crystalline cities rising from purple plains like frozen lightning. Beautiful and terrifying, just like everything else about the Catherian Empire. "Stop fidgeting. Reed!" General Voss growled from across the cabin. The older man's weathered face bore the scars of humanity's recent defeats, each line etched deeper by the weight of their desperate situation. "We need to look confident, not like we're begging for scraps." Marcus forced his hands to still, though his mind raced with the impossible task ahead. 3 months ago, Earth's deep space sensors had detected them, the Devourers, an ancient enemy that consumed entire star systems. Humanity had perhaps 2 years before they arrived, and their current technology was laughably inadequate against such a threat. The Catherians possessed weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand supernovas. They were humanity's only hope for survival. The problem was that Empress Zephyra had refused every previous diplomatic overture with cold indifference. The Palace of Frozen Stars. The Catherian Palace defied human understanding of architecture. Towers of living crystal spiraled into the sky, pulsing with inner light that shifted through colors that had no names in any human language. Gravity seemed optional here, with walkways that curved through impossible angles and chambers that existed in spaces that shouldn't have room for them. Marcus and the diplomatic team were escorted through corridors lined with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Banners of fallen empires hung like funeral shrouds, and weapons from defeated species were displayed in cases of shimmering force fields. The message was clear. The Catherian Empire did not negotiate. It conquered. Their escort, a towering warrior with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that burned with inner fire, remained silent as they walked. Commander Talon, according to their briefings, was one of the Empress's most trusted generals. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, and Marcus could feel the barely contained violence radiating from him like heat from a forge. "Remember," General Voss whispered as they approached the throne room, "we need this alliance. Swallow your pride, follow protocol, and maybe we can save our species." Marcus nodded, though something deep in his gut told him that protocol would not be enough today. The Untouchable Empress. The throne room was a cathedral of power. The ceiling disappeared into starlit darkness, while the walls were lined with floating platforms where Catherian nobles observed the proceedings like vultures waiting for carrion. At the center of it all, on a throne carved from a single piece of midnight crystal, sat Empress Zephyra. She was beautiful in the way that a supernova was beautiful, magnificent and utterly destructive. Her skin had the pale luminescence of starlight, and her hair flowed like liquid silver down to her shoulders. But it was her eyes that truly marked her as something beyond human understanding. They were the color of deep space, holding the cold indifference of the void itself. The Empress had ruled the Catherian Empire for over 3 centuries, expanding its borders through a combination of tactical brilliance and ruthless brutality. Entire species had knelt before her or been erased from existence. She had never shown mercy, never displayed weakness, and certainly never allowed herself to be touched by lesser beings. "So," her voice carried across the vast chamber like the whisper of cosmic wind, "the humans have come to beg again." General Voss stepped forward, his diplomatic training keeping his voice steady despite the obvious dismissal. "Your Imperial Majesty, we come not as beggars, but as potential allies. The threat approaching our sectors of space will be dealt with by the Empire, as all threats are dealt with." Zephyra's interruption was casual, as if she were discussing the weather. Your species has proven itself adequate as entertainment. Your wars are amusing to observe, but you offer nothing that the Empire requires. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. Adequate? Entertainment? Billions of human lives hung in the balance, and she spoke of them like they were characters in a play. He caught himself before the words could escape, remembering Voss's warning about protocol, the Garden of Eternity. The negotiations continued for hours, with General Voss presenting humanity's case with increasing desperation, while Empress Zephyra remained coldly uninterested. Marcus found his attention wandering to a small alcove near the throne where something impossible grew. A garden. In this palace of crystal and metal, someone had cultivated a patch of living earth. Strange alien plants swayed in an unfelt breeze, their petals shifting through colors that hurt to look at directly. But among them, growing in defiance of all logic, was something achingly familiar. A simple white flower that looked exactly like the daisies from his childhood home. During a brief recess, while the Empress conferred with her advisors in their musical language, Marcus found himself drawn to the alcove. The flower seemed to glow with inner light, its petals perfect and unblemished despite the alien soil that nurtured it. Without thinking, he reached out and gently plucked it from its stem. "What are you doing?" General Voss hissed, but Marcus was already walking back toward the throne, the flower clutched in his hand. The ancient law awakened. When the Empress returned her attention to the humans, Marcus stepped forward before Voss could stop him. The flower felt warm in his palm, almost alive, as he approached the base of the crystal throne. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I know our species has little to offer that impresses your empire, but sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest meaning." He held out the flower, its white petals stark against his tanned skin. "On my world, we give flowers to show respect, to acknowledge beauty, and to offer hope for the future. I give this to you not as a diplomat or a soldier, but as one being who recognizes the strength and grace of another." The silence that followed was deafening. Every Catherian in the chamber seemed frozen, their eyes wide with shock. Commander Talon's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, while the nobles on their floating platforms began whispering in voices like breaking glass. Empress Zephyra stared at the flower for a long moment, her cosmic eyes unreadable. Then slowly, she rose from her throne and descended the crystal steps. The sound of her footsteps echoed like heartbeats in the sudden quiet. When she reached Marcus, she stopped just close enough that he could feel the cold energy radiating from her skin. For a moment, he thought she might strike him down where he stood. Instead, she reached out with one pale hand and took the flower from his palm. The moment their skin made contact, the flower blazed with brilliant light that filled the entire chamber. The binding of fates. "Impossible," Commander Talon breathed, his weapon half drawn. Empress Zephyra stared at the flower in her hand, now glowing like a captive star. When she looked up at Marcus, her eyes held something he had never expected to see there: surprise. "Do you know what you have done, human?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shook his head, suddenly aware that every eye in the chamber was fixed on him with expressions ranging from shock to terror. The Empress held up the glowing flower for all to see. "The luminous bloom of Kitharos has not responded to anyone's touch for over 1,000 years. According to the ancient laws of our people, it chooses only one who is worthy to stand beside the throne as guardian of the realm." The chamber erupted in chaos. Nobles shouted in their musical language while guards rushed forward, unsure whether to protect or attack. General Voss grabbed Marcus's arm, his face pale with shock. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, though He already suspected the answer wouldn't be simple. Empress Zephyra raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent immediately. The flower continued to pulse with warm light between her fingers, casting dancing shadows on the crystal walls. "It means, Marcus Reed of Earth, that you have bound yourself to me by laws older than this empire. You are now my chosen guardian, sworn to protect the throne and prove your worth through trials of combat, wisdom, and sacrifice." Her smile was sharp as starlight. "Should you fail any of these trials or attempt to flee this responsibility, the penalty is death." Marcus felt the weight of cosmic irony settling on his shoulders. He had come here as a diplomat trying to save his species, and instead had somehow entangled himself in ancient alien law. The flower's glow seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if it were alive and aware of his predicament. "And if I succeed in these trials?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The Empress stepped closer, close enough that he could see flecks of silver in her dark eyes. "Then you will have earned the right to stand at my side as we face the Devourers together. Your species will be granted the protection of the Empire, and you will become the first human to hold rank in the Cytherian military hierarchy." Around them, the court watched in stunned silence as their untouchable Empress held a conversation with a human as if he were an equal. It was unprecedented, scandalous, and absolutely captivating. Marcus looked at the flower, still glowing in Zephyra's hand, then back at her alien face. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people counting on this mission's success, of the approaching darkness that would consume everything he had ever loved. "When do the trials begin?" he asked. For the first time since he had entered the throne room, Empress Zephyra smiled. Not the cold, predatory expression she had worn before, but something warmer and infinitely more dangerous. "Tomorrow, Guardian. Tomorrow we discover if humanity's reputation for impossible victories extends to battles they cannot win through simple violence." As the court slowly began to disperse and arrangements were made for Marcus's quarters, he caught General Voss's eye. The older man's expression was a mixture of pride, terror, and disbelief. Marcus had gotten them their chance at alliance, but the price might be higher than any of them had imagined. The flower's warm glow against Zephyra's pale skin seemed to whisper of destinies intertwined and fates sealed by the simplest of gestures. The untouchable Empress had been touched, and the galaxy would never be the same. The trials and unexpected alliance. The arena of Shattered Dreams Dawn on Kitharos Prime painted the sky in shades of violet and gold. But Marcus Reed barely noticed the alien sunrise. He stood in the center of the proving grounds, a massive arena, carved from living rock, that had witnessed 1,000 years of trials. The walls rose impossibly high around him, their surfaces covered in glowing runes that told the stories of champions long dead. War Master Corvin circled him like a predator, evaluating prey. The Cytherian warrior was a mountain of muscle and scarred flesh, his 4 arms each ending in claws that could tear through steel. Battle marks covered his obsidian skin like a map of victories, and his orange eyes burned with the fire of countless conflicts. "You are small," Corvin rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Weak, soft. How did such a pitiful creature trigger the luminous bloom?" Marcus adjusted his grip on the plasma blade they had given him, feeling its unfamiliar weight. After a sleepless night studying Cytherian combat techniques, he knew he was hopelessly outmatched, but 20 years of human warfare had taught him that being outmatched and being defeated were 2 different things. "Maybe I got lucky," Marcus replied, settling into a defensive stance. "Or maybe your flower has terrible taste in partners." From the observation gallery high above, Empress Zephyra watched with her court. She had said nothing when the trials were announced, but Marcus had caught something in her cosmic eyes. Not concern, exactly, but a flicker of something that might have been curiosity. The flower from yesterday sat in a crystal vase beside her throne, still glowing with that mysterious inner light. The first trial. Begins Corvin attacked without warning, all four arms moving in a deadly dance that should have ended the fight in seconds. But Marcus had spent years fighting enemies with superior technology and numbers. He rolled under the first strike, deflected the second with his blade, and used the War Master's momentum to put distance between them. Interesting, Corvin growled, genuine surprise coloring his voice. You fight like prey that has learned to think. On my world, we call it tactics, Marcus panted, already feeling the strain. The gravity on Kitharos Prime was heavier than Earth's, and the arena's atmosphere was thick with energy that made every breath burn. The War Master came again, this time more cautiously. His claws sparked against Marcus's blade as they traded blows, the human giving ground steadily but staying alive through pure, stubborn refusal to fall. Each exchange taught Marcus something new about his opponent's patterns, about the way Kytherian combat flowed like a deadly river, minutes stretched into an eternity of violence. Marcus's uniform was torn and bloodied, his left arm hung uselessly at his side, and exhaustion weighed on him like a physical force. But he was still standing, still fighting, still learning. You cannot win, Corvin said during a brief pause. His breathing barely elevated while Marcus gasped for air. Why do you continue? Marcus wiped blood from his mouth and smiled. Because giving up isn't in human nature. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Something changed in the War Master's expression then. The predatory gleam softened into something like respect. Perhaps, he said quietly, that is wisdom rather than stupidity. The unexpected lesson, the next attack came slower, more measured. Marcus realized with a shock that Corvin was no longer trying to kill him quickly. The War Master was teaching him, showing him the patterns of Kytherian combat through direct experience. Each strike contained a lesson, each defense revealed a technique. Your species fascinates me, human, Corvin said as their blades locked together. In my 3 centuries of life, I have seen many peoples kneel before the Empire. Most beg for mercy or rage against their fate. But you... He pushed Marcus back with casual strength. You adapt, you learn. You refuse to surrender even when... Defeat is certain. Marcus staggered but kept his feet, revelation dawning. This isn't really about winning, is it? It's about proving something else. The luminous bloom does not choose warriors, Corvin confirmed, lowering his weapon slightly. It chooses those with the strength to endure, to sacrifice, to stand, firm when all hope is lost. Tell me, Marcus Reed, what would you sacrifice for your people? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus thought of Earth, of the approaching devourers, of the billions of humans who didn't even know their fate hung in the balance. Everything, he said simply. My life, my freedom, my future. Whatever it takes. Corvin nodded slowly, then did something that shocked the entire arena. He knelt. The first trial is complete, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the proving grounds. The human has demonstrated the heart of a guardian. The summons from the stars before Marcus could fully process what had happened. Alarms began wailing throughout the palace. The crystal walls of the arena pulsed with urgent red light, and Commander Talon's voice echoed from hidden speakers. All forces to battle stations. Unknown vessels detected at the system's edge. Repeat, unknown vessels approaching Kytharos Prime. Empress Zephyra materialized beside them in a shimmer of transported light, her expression grim. The trials must... Wait, she said, her cosmic eyes fixed on some distant threat. Our sensors have detected them. The devourers have arrived ahead of schedule. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. That's impossible. Our calculations showed we had 2 years. Your calculations were wrong, Zephyra cut him off. Or they have accelerated their approach. Either way, 37 devourer ships are entering our system as we speak. Through the arena's transparent dome, they could see pinpricks of darkness against the star field, ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each one was the size of a small moon, their hulls covered in organic-looking growths that pulsed with malevolent life. "How long until they reach the planet?" Marcus asked, his military training automatically analyzing the tactical situation. 6 hours, Commander Talon reported as he joined them. "Our fleet is moving to intercept, but our intelligence on their capabilities is limited." Marcus turned to Zephyra, seeing something in her expression that he had never expected: uncertainty. For the first time since he had met her, the untouchable Empress looked genuinely worried. "What do you need from me?" he asked. The War Council of Two Worlds. The next 3 hours were a blur of frantic preparation. Marcus found himself in the palace's command center, a crystalline chamber that offered a three-dimensional view of the entire star system. Cytherian battle. Cruisers moved like silver arrows toward the approaching darkness, while communication arrays buzzed with reports from across the Empire. "Your human fleet," Zephyra said without preamble, as Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. "How quickly can they reach this system?" The weathered admiral looked surprised to see Marcus standing beside the Empress, but his professionalism kept him focused. 12 hours at maximum burn, Your Majesty. But our ships won't be much use against targets that size." "Perhaps not individually," Zephyra mused. "But human tactics have always favored coordination over individual strength. War Master Corvin, what is your assessment of combined operations?" Corvin, who had remained at Marcus's side since the interrupted trial, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. "Human ships are smaller, more maneuverable. They could provide screening for our main battle line or conduct harassment. Attacks while we engage the primary targets." Marcus stepped forward, an idea forming. "What if we reversed the roles? Cytherian ships have the firepower to hurt these things, but you fight like individual heroes. Humans fight like a pack. What if your ships provided the killing blow while ours coordinated the attack patterns?" The silence that followed was deafening. No one had ever suggested that the mighty Cytherian Empire could learn from humanity's military doctrine. Empress Zephyra's laugh broke the tension, not mocking, but genuinely delighted. Audacious, unprecedented, completely against every tradition of imperial warfare. Her smile was sharp as starlight. "I approve. Implement immediate joint operations protocols." The battle above the clouds. The first engagement began as the Devourer fleet entered the outer system. Marcus watched from the command center as silver Cytherian dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons that could shatter asteroids. The enemy ships absorbed the punishment like cosmic sponges, their organic hulls rippling and reforming around the damage. "They're adapting to our weapons," Commander Talon reported, his voice tight with concern. "Energy absorption rates increasing with each hit." "Then we change tactics," Marcus said, his years of combat experience taking over. "Admiral Chen, deploy your ships in wolf-pack formations. Hit-and-run attacks, different weapons each time. Don't let them adapt to any single approach." The human fleet arrived like a swarm of silver insects, their smaller ships darting between the massive devourers with reckless courage. Kinetic weapons, plasma torpedoes, nuclear mines. Each attack was different, forcing the enemy to constantly readjust their defenses. "It's working," Zephyra breathed, her eyes reflecting the light of distant explosions. "They cannot adapt to chaos." But the Devourers were learning too. They began targeting the human ships directly, their weapons reaching out like dark tentacles to drag the smaller vessels into crushing embraces. Marcus watched in horror as ship after ship disappeared into the organic maws of the enemy. "We're losing too many people," Admiral Chen reported, his face grim on the communication screen. "These hit-and-run tactics are bleeding us dry." Marcus felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a familiar coat. Every tactical decision meant lives lost or saved, futures destroyed or preserved. But there was something else he was seeing in the battle patterns, something that tickled at his military instincts. They're hurting us, he realized suddenly. Look at their formation. They're not trying to destroy our fleets. They're pushing us toward the planet. Zephyr's eyes widened with understanding. They want us to retreat to the surface. Why would they? She stopped, her face going pale with realization. The population centers. They're not here to conquer Kitharos Prime. They're here to feed. The Guardian's choice, the revelation, changed everything. If the Devourers reached the planet's surface, billions of Kitherians would become food for the cosmic parasites. The combined human-Kitherian fleet was all that stood between them and wholesale genocide. We need to hold them here, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. Draw them away from the planet, whatever the cost. With what? Commander Talon demanded. Half our fleet is damaged, and the humans have lost 60% of their ships. We don't have the firepower for a decisive engagement. Marcus looked at the tactical display, seeing the chessboard of space combat laid out in 3 dimensions. There was a way, risky, probably suicidal, but it might work. The luminous bloom, he said suddenly, turning to Zephyra. You said it. Chooses those willing to sacrifice everything. What if that's not just metaphor? What if it's literally connected to some kind of power source? Zephyra stared at him, her cosmic eyes wide with something between horror and hope. The old legends speak of the Guardian's final gift, a sacrifice that could channel the planet's core energy through the one chosen by the bloom. But it would mean death, Marcus finished. Yeah, I figured that part out. The command center fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle. War Master Corvin placed one massive hand on Marcus's shoulder, his orange eyes reflecting deep respect. You would die for people who are not your own? He asked quietly. Marcus thought of Earth, of the Devourers that would head there next if they weren't stopped here. He thought of the flower that had changed everything, still glowing in its crystal vase. They're not strangers anymore, he said. Besides, someone once told me that giving up isn't in human nature. Empress Zephyra stepped closer, her pale hand touching his cheek with surprising gentleness. There might be another way. If the bond, created by the bloom, works both ways. She trailed off, her expression thoughtful. What are you thinking? Marcus asked. Her smile was brilliant and terrible. That perhaps it's time for an empress to remember what it means to be a guardian as well. The light that saved 2 worlds. What happened next would be remembered in both human and Kitherian history as the miracle of the joined light. Empress Zephyra and Marcus Reed, bound by an ancient flower and united by necessity, walked hand in, hand to the palace's highest tower. The luminous bloom sat in its crystal vase, pulsing with the rhythm of 2 heartbeats. When they touched it together, the flower exploded into light that could be seen from space, a pillar of pure energy that reached from the planet's core to the star-filled void above. The energy struck the Devourer fleet like the wrath of a dying sun. Ships that had absorbed every other weapon simply dissolved in the face of power that was part technology, part ancient magic, and entirely beyond their ability to adapt to or consume. In the command center below, Admiral Chen and War Master Corvin watched in awe as 37 world-killing ships simply ceased to exist. When the light faded, Marcus and Zephyra still stood together on the tower, somehow still alive despite channeling enough energy to power a star. The flower between them had changed. No longer white, but showing veins of silver and gold that pulsed with gentle warmth. The bond saved us, Zephyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder. 2 spirits sharing the burden, making the impossible merely difficult. Marcus looked out at the star field, now clear of the threat that had seemed unstoppable. In the distance, He could see human and Cytherian ships working together to rescue survivors and salvage what remained of their fleets. "So what happens now?" he asked. Zephyr's smile was warmer than he had ever seen it. "Now, Guardian, we build something new, an alliance between our peoples, forged in battle and sealed by sacrifice. The Devourers will come again, but they will find us ready." As if to confirm her words, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The destruction of the Devourer fleet had been seen by dozens of species, and messages of alliance and support were arriving from every corner of known space. "The Terran Cytherian Empire," Marcus mused, testing the words, "has a nice ring to it." "Indeed it does," Zephyra agreed, her hand still intertwined with his around the transformed flower. "Though I suspect our children will have quite interesting stories to tell about how their parents first met." Marcus laughed, a sound that echoed across the crystal city below. "Yeah, that's going to be one hell of a bedtime story." The untouchable Empress had been touched by humanity's greatest gift, the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. And in return, she had shown them that even the mightiest rulers could choose love over conquest, partnership over dominion. The Galaxy would never be the same, and both species were grateful for it.